Hello, good morning. My name is Tim Kelly, Captain with Evans Fire. I have been, I'm not sure. Anyway, I'm going to get up and try and lead a discussion here. Please let me lower expectations. Don't expect much from this. I don't have a lot of value. What I basically did is I went through the standard operating guide for the Snohomish County HazMat team and brought all the pertinent information for incident command into a presentation to do our HazMat IC refresher this year. Also as part of this to bring in the whole world of special operations, I'm also doing a presentation here on kind of rescue IC or special operations IC as well. So without any further ado, we'll go ahead and we'll get started. So 2022 Rescue IC Refresher. I wish I had a clicker, but I don't, so boom. So the objectives of this quick little discussion we're going to have is going to be an overview of IC responsibilities in rescue and also a little bit about the capabilities of the Snohomish County Technical Rescue Team. So these events can be difficult and hard because they're low frequency, high risk. They're often going to require specialized resources. May involve non-traditional partners, depending on the operation you have going on, city facilities, other such things. You may have to have a unified command, again, considering the task at hand and the area of which it could be. They can be long-term events, and the actions and what's actually going on may be outside of the site of the incident command post. And in sometimes it's probably preferable that it's outside the line of sight of the incident command post. We'll talk a little bit about that. First off, Snohomish County Technical Rescue Team, we follow 4 primary disciplines. That's trench, confined space, rope, and urban search and rescue. So everyone on the team is trained to the technician level of trench, confined space, and rope. And USAR really doesn't have a technician level that we follow, but we get lots of training on it. A couple other things too is things that we might not consider or think of normally is heavy extrication, as far as extrication and support for large commercial vehicles like semi-rigs and cement trucks, things like that. And then water operations is kind of a per department issue. I know, I'm not familiar with South County, but I know Surfer has swift water and rescue surface divers, not divers with scuba, but free divers. And Everett as well has that same capability within our department. So we'll talk a little bit about alarm designations and what kind of alarms go into a rescue. You'll have a Rescue A, which is, I'm assuming for angle, which is rope rescue. Rescue C for confined space. Rescue TR for trench rescue. Rescue ST for structural. And then you'll have 2 different water rescues, which is Rescue Swift Water and Rescue WA, which is Water Rescue Surface. Now, auto extrication, at least in our FRLs, our dispatch alarms, I did not find any kind of an extrication alarm that could be tied into the rescue team. So as we talk about that, keep that in consideration. This is a little sheet that was developed, updated here recently, and I want to make sure that I explain it was very correctly updated. But one thing you should understand is that this algorithm or sheet actually comes from our SOPs. Those SOPs, surprisingly enough, do not line up with our FRLs. So this will not translate to SNOCOM. So if you try and use this and think in these terms as far as what resources you are getting for a rescue from SNOCOM, it's not going to work. I have no confidence that it will work. Maybe it will, I don't know. So as part of this, as we go through the different types of rescues, I'm actually going to dive into what our FRLs will actually send you for those specific rescues. And the rescues are not, they're not equal throughout that as well. So keep that in mind. So first we'll talk about MVCs. So heavy extrication, MVC entrapment. Again, this is one thing to consider here. You might normally not think about a technical rescue deployment for that, but The Rescue 42s that many of our trucks carry, they tap out at 4,000 pound capacity, full extension. The hyperfusion struts that we have on the technical rescue rigs tap out at 20,000 pounds. So you can see how if you're dealing with a semi-tractor trailer or something that's in the area of 80,000 pounds, you're going to have a hard time stabilizing that with Rescue 42s, or even trying to do any kind of a lift. So calling out at least the technical rescue team, and you may not want to do some kind of a full rescue collapse or trench request, but getting TR5 and TR21, and I'm not exactly sure where Marysville's putting their over-the-road hydrofusion package, but getting those units coming can bring a lot of resources for dealing with that. The other thing that I'm not sure how much of this gets outside of the rescue team, but Dick's Towing has a great capability as far as their 60-ton rotators and a lot of the equipment that they can bring to bear to deal with these large loads. And a lot of the operators for Dick's have had extensive training nationwide in this kind of operation, even in the rescue setting. So they can be an invaluable resource if we've got a cement truck on top of a car with a viable victim in it. Trench. Trench rescue. Just 1 second here. Let me see if I can change. I've got participants. I want it to be. I'm going to try and bring up the chat here. So if anybody has any questions they want to throw in the chat, you can go ahead and do so. I'll have to monitor it at the same time, but I will give it my best effort. So a trench defined here in Washington is basically anything deeper than 4 feet and 25 feet of lateral flow. When we say deeper than 4 feet, realize that the spoil pile next to it will count in that depth. So basically anytime we dig a hole, it's probably going to be a trench. Understand though that also in that definition, the trench has to be narrower than deep, and it can't be any more than 15 feet at the bottom. So we can get a big enough hole here that's really going to be more of an excavation than a trench. Oftentimes, luckily enough, most of our trench rescues, as we would think of them, are going to be a medical issue in a trench. So we haven't had a trench collapse. It doesn't necessarily have to be dealt with as a technical rescue. But you might want to think about a way to get the person out of the trench. That in and of itself may be a technical rescue to get a high point, some kind of a litter package or something to get them out. But in an actual trench collapse, realize that a lot of considerations we have are going to be atmospheric monitoring. You have gas pockets in the ground. You have all sorts of utilities, gas line, propane lines. You don't know if they've been ruptured or not, so we definitely have to do air monitoring to make sure we have a survivable atmosphere. We want to make sure we're shutting down and securing equipment within 50 feet. Want to establish, want to make sure that you're getting the correct alarm, which we'll talk about in the next slide. Establish contact with the patient. So if the rescue team hasn't arrived on scene yet, you're at the operations level. If you can make contact with the patient to find out if you have a viable victim, and you can send them any resources that they might be able to use to help themselves, that's always a good thing. And then the next thing on an operations level that you can get started on is ground pads and bridging. We like to set up bridging, which would be, we talk about it with all of our entry firefighters. So I'm not going to try and get too technical on that here, but realize that a lot of ladders will probably be necessary. So maybe heavier on the ladder rigs would be a good idea. A lot of 35s come in very useful on these operations. So again, I'm sorry for those outside our agency. I did not do a deep dive into your FRLs, but for Everett Fire, this gives you an example of what's going to happen with our dispatch codes for a trench or a rescue TR. Realize that there's 3 different geographical areas that we consider in our dispatches, and that's POE is Port of Everett. I'm not sure what LAR is, but LAR is basically the mudflats to the north. So this is going to be any area that basically is going to probably be in Marysville, but it's going to be our primary response because it's northbound on I-5. So if you can look at our first, and then there's the Navy. If you look at our first alarm package here for a trench rescue, you're going to get the TR5, you get HazMat 1, you're getting 3 engines, a ladder, 1 medic unit specifically, and then another medic or aid car, whoever's closest and available. You're only going to get 1 BC, and you're going to get MSO5. So if MSO5 is not on duty, that FRL is specific to MSO5. You will not get an MSO. It is MSO5 only. So if we don't have MSO5 that day, you're short that person. If you are in the Port of Everett being the Boeing dock that's over in Mukilteo, they will add engine 24 to it. So it's an additional engine that you're going to get on this call. And if you're in the Navy, there's a non-specific engine as part of that, so you will probably, instead of getting 3 Everett engines, you're going to get 2 Everett engines, and you're going to get the Navy engine. And then again, if you're in the LRA zone, you will get Battalion 61 specifically will be attached to this call if they're available. Second alarm, if you go to a second alarm trench, you're going to get an additional engine and ladder company, and you're going to get the special ops chief and the safety chief. Then if you go to a third alarm, you'll get all the TRs of the county with whatever techs they have available on them. And then if you go to a fourth alarm, you'll get an additional 4 engines, a ladder, a BC, and you'll get a TR2 or TR5A or whatever it's going to be called when it goes into service. So the next situation we'll deal with is confined space. So what is a confined space? It's basically anything that is going to have limited egress or ingress, is not designed for continuous occupancy, and then has any possible of an engulfing or asphyxiation hazard. So these are very tech-intensive operations. By the time we get a primary entry team, a backup team, a communications officer, an entry officer, and everything, you need about 13 techs. So this is going to be one of those calls that if you're out on a confined space, you probably should go to a fourth alarm right away, just in order to get enough techs there to fill all those roles. Again, when we think about operations here, it's basically going to be deny entry. We want to try and establish ventilation, secure any hazards, electrical, utilities. Getting that stuff done before the tech team shows up will definitely help us be able to focus more on the rescue aspect of things. Again, the FRLs for our confined space, you can see it's pretty much the same as before. You're still only getting 1 BC on the first alarm. And then again, if it's over at the dock, you'll get engine 24, and if it's north on the freeway, you'll get engine 61. Rope. So that's going to be a Rescue A dispatch. So we've got kind of within the Everett Fire Department, we have what we consider an operations level would be the steep angle or our long haul, short haul system on our ladder. So remember, you have those capabilities at an operational level. But if you're going to exceed the ability to use that, then that becomes a tech response. So what kind of things do we need to consider there? Basically, when we talk about steep angle, this is something we can walk up probably on our own, but the idea of carrying a patient up, it becomes too much, so we have the rope system for that. But if we were to scurry down it, we could do it on our own. If we get any steeper than that, we're really treacherous, or the thought that we might trip and fall and roll down the hill and injure ourselves, then that's going to become high angle. Consider a drone for recon to try and find the patient. I know at the recent Pigeon Creek fire, we were able to use the drone with the infrared, what do they call it? I don't know. Anyway, whatever that is, the infrared camera, and so you can set it over, find heat signatures, find the body lying in the crevasse might be very helpful. And then also, to whatever degree you can anticipate this, if we have something complicated that we're going to have to pull somebody up and then actually direct their line in or out or left or right, that's what we call an offset or deflection line. That again is going to become very tech intensive very quickly because of the number of techs we have to set up all these different systems. So again, going to that third alarm sooner than later would probably be a good idea. So we aren't standing around waiting for techs to get there. Again, our rope FRLs, this is an interesting one. So for a rope, you're going to get an extra BC on your first alarm. You're now going to get 2. And other than that, it doesn't change much either. So structural collapse, USAR, realize that if we have the big subduction zone earthquake, it's who knows what's going to happen, right? We're going to be on our own. I'm imagining Everett's going to be stuck in Everett taking care of Everett problems. South County is going to be stuck in South County taking care of South County problems, and so on and so forth. And it's going to be days before we're going to see anything from FEMA or some kind of a USAR team. So you're going to have to manage that on, like, I think a whole nother level. But in our daily lives, we could very easily have a car go into a building. We could have a natural gas explosion that makes that building seem unsafe, and if there's a viable victim in there, there may be a reason that we have to enter that building rather than just not go in. Meth lab explosion as well, or construction or demolition issues that go wrong. Again, it could create a situation where we have an unstable building, but if we have victims in there, we have a need to go in. So in that kind of a situation, you're going to want to think about getting a structural or a rescue structural response going, to have your resources available to deal with that. And then again, here's our Everett FRLs for it. So again, this call, you'll get 2 VCs. And, again, think about a third alarm, because if you're not aware of it, I would imagine this is probably a common theme throughout the county, that one TR is not going to have enough equipment to deal with really shoring up a building of any size. So getting that equipment going early and coming to you is going to be very, very important. Last kind of area to talk about is our water rescue situations, either whether it be swift water or surface water. Again, Everett Fire has rescue swimmers, and I know Surfer has rescue swimmers. Everett Fire has the Marine team with a couple different boats. And realize too, you may or may not get the boat initially on dispatch. There are a few in which you will, though. So depending on where it is, if you have anything up on the river, boat 5 is actually going to be dispatched as part of the initial alarm. And then if you have anything over at the Port of Everett at that Boeing dock over in Mukilteo, Marine 1 actually gets dispatched as the initial alarm. And that is independent of your engines. So, and I'm not sure how that would work out, whether the cops are going to get paged for that initially, but if you actually go into the FRLs, it's not like engine 5 is thought to be taking boat 5, it's dispatching 3 engines and it's dispatching boat 5. All right, this is kind of a picture of an upcoming resource that Everett is supposed to be getting. I think all the chips have finally been recovered. It's been in the works for a couple of years. It's going to be a picker truck that we're going to be able to grab short Connex boxes and pull them up on the rig and then drive them to wherever location they are needed. The thought is that we may have a Connex box for trench rescue. We may have a Connex box for shoring, and all these things just ready to go. So as it comes in, that might be a very useful resource throughout the county. Are there any questions on incident command for rescue? Wow, I must either put everybody to sleep or I was very thorough. I'm not sure which. Okay. Anybody need a quick break?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike. So you were breaking out a little bit, Mike. So the FRLs were download. So the way I guess it works is dispatch has, or New World has its protocols for dispatch. And then back in July, every once in a while, Cindy asked that they download them into an Excel spreadsheet. So what I looked at was the downloaded Excel spreadsheet from July, which is the most recent download. And I'm going to assume that our SOPs have not been changed since then. So I think that difference has been long-standing. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks, Tim.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, well, we'll take a quick 5-minute break to let people get up and get some water or coffee and go to the bathroom if they need to. And then we'll get started on the HazMat.
Tim, just a side question.
Yeah.
On trenches, I understand 4 feet deep. I didn't understand 25-foot lateral travel.
So it's 25 feet long.
So if it's less than 25 feet long?
It doesn't meet the WAC definition of a trench.
I did not know that.
But, you know, that doesn't mean that you don't need to treat it as such.
Does that
that
mean
makes
the
sense.
contractor may not need to shore it?
Well, realize too, right? Shoring requirements are L&I requirements.
Oh,
They're not like necessarily law requirements. So oftentimes, if a contractor does not have any employees, they can, I mean, they are the person. I am the owner of the business and I am doing this as the business. They can do whatever they want.
for real?
For real.
I had no idea.
From an L&I perspective.
So,
And I don't know if that kind of gets into, you know, to some, I mean, I know a lot of the instances I've heard of over the years of trench collapses have been just that.
the owner.
Dude and his son got a backhoe and they're doing whatever. And it's like, no, I don't have to do that because we are not employees.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that would explain a lot of the sketch stuff I've seen in my neighborhood.
Yeah. Yep. And I don't know too, I mean, the whole idea of, like I say, excavation versus trench, I'm not sure if that played into what happened over the shoreline. If you're familiar with what happened in shoreline.
I haven't read up on that one.
Yeah, so I mean, they were basically, there was like a house on a hillside, and they were working down the hill trying to get to a sewer connection to make a sewer repair.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, I mean, in the end, as they were working down this hill, right? I mean, you really don't have an opposing side, they're working down the hill.
Yeah.
They really only did like a 4 or maybe 5 foot hole that they were actually putting struts in when then the hillside gave way and buried them.
Damn.
Yeah, so.
All right.
Rich, don't forget to sign in if,
Yeah.
okay.
Can we go to a third alarm without one in a second?
As far as I know, and this is why I wanted to clarify this, we have to go, we're dispatched on a first alarm, we have to say second alarm, then say third alarm. Now, I guess if for some reason you were like, hey, I don't need an extra engine and a ladder, I just need the TRs, then you could special request, just send me TR 31, send me TRs, but you can't say like, I only want the third alarm only, don't give me the second alarm.
First alarm and a TR strike team?
I'm not sure Snowcom would get that.
Oh.
I guess you could always say, give me a first alarm, now upgrade to a second, now upgrade to a third, oh, and hey, cancel that ladder and engine that are coming.
Yeah, and then
And that other, well, there's no other BC, right? Don't let the opposite safety chief come, right? I don't know.
well, they might not come anyway.
Yeah, they might not be here, right?
That's what we did. We just very cherry-picked our techs off the rigs, created rigs that could run service without techs and sent them away.
Hey, where's this signage you talked about?
Back there on the back table.
Next to the lollipops. This one wasn't included yet for the class. Yeah, I think I was wrong.
I like the fonts you chose for your slides.
The font? Yeah, I don't know, it's whatever was eventually there. I don't. PowerPoints are not my thing.
Doing a great job.
Well, see, I properly lowered expectations.
Right. Wow, it doesn't suck nearly as much as I thought it was going to.
Exactly. I wonder if I should stop this and restart it.
I would not mess with it, but I don't know.
Well, she was saying she wasn't sure how much
It's got.
record power or time we had.
Yeah, it's not bad. Yeah, I'll stop it. What the heck? I can always have Cindy come back down.
Well, I don't know. If I stop it, will it like go away and not have like a start button?
I don't know. That's what
I think I'm gonna go with yours. Don't mess with it.
Cindy usually gives us all the directions we need, and she did not include stopping it as part of her direction.
Yeah.
How many people do you have online?
I don't know. 10, 12.
That's pretty good.
I'm not sure how you. I'm not sure how. I don't want to script the chat.
Yeah, if we have an SOP on what we expect our alarm packages to bring, I'm hoping at some point Landy will work with Cindy and get the SOP, get the FRLs to match the SOP.
Well, either way, right? But yeah, I mean, you shouldn't have two different documents to create this confusion
The
because.
trouble is we have brand new alarm response sheets that have already been laminated, so it's gonna be easier to change the snow cone in than to re-laminate a million sheets.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's the tail wagging the dog in this one.
Well, you know, that's how it goes. All right. This is not going to be. I think somebody said this was going till 12. Yeah, that ain't gonna happen.
I heard 11.
You heard 11? Yeah. Well, I just kind of did a
I heard
tour.
9:45.
Yeah, that's probably going to be really closer to what this is. I try not to overcomplicate things. All right. Out there in TV land, I assume we've got everybody back. I don't want to take up any more of your day than I have to, so we're going to keep moving on here and work into our HazMat IC refresher. So for this slideshow, just so we understand, we do have a HazMat SOG that is countywide developed and adopted. So what I did is I basically went through that SOG and just made sure to highlight all the requirements that are on the IC. This is not a tech class. I'm not going to try and get I'm not going to try and be too specific, because if you're a tech, then we do that otherwise. And if you're an IC, I just want to try and give you a good understanding of the responsibilities that you have and what you should be thinking about. So moving on. Objectives, overview, as I said, of IC responsibilities in the HazMat. There's 7 steps specified in the SOGs, and then there's an IC checklist, and that's what we're going to mainly be talking about today. So again, just like special operations and the technical rescue stuff, these are low frequency, high risk events, often requiring specialized resources, involving non-traditional partners with the possibility of unified command and long-term events. So, the number one process is your approach. Don't rush in. Use extreme caution. Assume hazardous materials are present. I've heard, I'm not sure where I heard this, but I remember doing research and finding an event where the engine in responding in, I can't remember what the product was, but they rolled in, I guess a rainy area, they thought it might just be water, rolled in, next thing you know their tires are on fire because they're rolling through an oxidizer and the rubber's catching on fire. And then they jump out and try and run away, and now guess what, their boots are on fire. So always have in mind that this could be a hazardous product in which you're rolling into. Don't become part of the problem. Avoid exposure to those spills, vapor clouds, smoke, suspicious packages, suspected bioagents, and confined spaces. You want to position your apparatus upwind, uphill, and facing away from the incident, so if you need to quickly leave, you can. Approach for recon. will be made an SCBA and full PPE using the buddy system. And remember, recon is to find out whether or not we actually have a hazardous event. So if we see some big plume of cloud of smoke, or not smoke rather, but some green haze, I mean, we're pretty sure that's not Kimberly-Clark giving off condensation anymore. That's something else. And so realize that sometimes recon isn't necessarily appropriate. That's not to say you don't go in with SCBA and PPE, but realize you can't call recon, you can't call that recon anymore. Realize too, as we go through some of this stuff, that these steps 1 through 7, we put them in a process, they're in an ordered number, but a lot of this stuff has to be going on simultaneously. You need to be kind of evaluating the situation that you're seeing, evaluating it safely, and also be making resource determinations and upgrading and processing that very quickly in order to make sure we don't get bogged down and we have a good process from the start. So our size up right, use our binoculars, maybe use a drone if you have that available to you, to go ahead and determine the type of incident. Either we have a fire, a spill, is there a container failure, do we have an explosion? Of course, we have to consider, weapons of mass destruction, bioterrorism, what have you. Is it a facility that may be a terrorist target? Have we gotten threats? Do we have, I know we all have our own facilities in our areas that activists of all types may be interested in derailing or attacking. So you always need to be cautious when you have alarms in those locations. Mistype. Is there a suspected biological agent? Okay, we can refer to the biological incident response flowchart in section 1 of this document. Another thing available is you can look at your symptomology of any patients to give you the thought of whether or not you've got a biological agent going on or a chemical targeted to people. It's always good in that size up. Let's try to identify the container that is involved, its size, its type, and condition. Identify the product if you can from placards, labels, anything you visually observe, or any witnesses, which you're going to find out is going to come up again in another one. And determine your priorities. Do we have people who need rescue? Do we have a life issue? Is it just the environmental issue? Do we have a property issue? Resource determination, again, this is something you should always be thinking of. If you see something overwhelming, something that you can just look at and say, oh, this is going to be a big one, then go ahead and grab it. As far as I know, for our Everett folks, this is in line with the FRLs. I went through the FRLs and looked at it, and this is in line with our FRLs, so we can rely on this. But that'll give you a good idea of what you have coming. I might do one side note here. All on and off duty techs, I think that's going to be kind of a tenuous thing. That's